What makes Facebook, you think, the largest social media company in the world?
Facebook had of just moving fast was great for a software company. OpenAI was killing the market.
So Adobe acquired their first ever company in India. It's a generative AI company that got famous after the Shah Rukh Khan ad with Cadbury. Today we talk to Shivam Mangla, the founder of Rephrase, which has been acquired by Adobe now. Shivam is an IIT alumni and has worked at Facebook before starting Rephrase. I wanted to talk to him about Facebook and how it maintains its dominance. We talk about GenAI startups and how they can be built today, and Ola's Krutrim and Ambani's Hanuman for India. So, welcome to GoVenture podcast. I'm Pritesh Kumar, आपका host and founder of Functional. I've run multiple companies, raised and burned capital, and I've shut startups down too. फेल हुआ, learn किया, succeed भी किया at almost everything that this startup and business world can offer. Hence, GoVenture podcast एक friendly reminder है उन सभी hacks and strategies के लिए जो जरूरी है grow करने के लिए and to achieve your dreams. Lastly, join our group in the description to share stuff and startup networking with like-minded folks. And lastly, thank you for all the love and comments that you share. It means a lot. Hey Shivam, hi, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Pritesh. Thanks for having me.
So Shivam, you worked at starting से start करते you worked at Facebook for 3 years, right? First London में, then US में. And I have a very generic and a very lame question for you. From your experience working at Facebook, what makes Facebook, you think, the largest social media company in the world?
I think if you think about any company, uh, there are a lot of reasons for the companies to be successful, but I honestly believe that a lot of it is just mostly survivorship bias. So once something is successful, you can go on and keep thinking why this was successful. uh, Facebook did a lot of things right. I'm sure a lot of other social media also did a lot of those things right. Why Facebook won was initially, I think in the early days, they got the distribution right. Right, the culture that Facebook had of just moving fast was great for a software company, right? So people were all the engineers, ICs were empowered to do things, and they could just launch a lot of those things on their own and then experiment. Facebook had an insane culture of experimentation. So everything that would go out, you would roll out to a small audience, and then you would do A/B testing for that. Almost every feature went through it, and I think that was a key strength. Other than that, I think Facebook just got the timing right for a lot of those things, right? So Facebook, when entered the market, their distribution strategy, of course, like was excellent. They went from college to college, and then Facebook adapted a lot over time. So
Mhm.
when the mobile revolution came in, Facebook just kind of adapted to that. Facebook was one of those companies which were just desktop only, and then mobile kicked in, and then they, because of their this move fast culture, they could just adapt to mobile, and then all the changing platforms, right? So you see Instagram, WhatsApp, they
Mm.
bought it at the time, and people think they were overvalued, and Facebook
Mhm.
just proved to be right. Those are like now today the biggest kind of platforms and use products for Facebook. So I think that way, Facebook's timing has been really good. The culture of innovation and adaptability. I think there are like some key factors, which I think would be true for most businesses.
I think, and I think Mark Zuckerberg na, was pretty much, like you said, pretty much right about Instagram, WhatsApp, when very few people thought कि यार Instagram बड़ा कैसे होगा? Instagram, a $1 billion company, uh, valuing Instagram at $1 billion, and जब वो 15-20 लोगों की team थी, I believe, right? Was a crazy move, right? And similarly for WhatsApp. मतलब, I believe you worked at Facebook. What do you think what do you think gets Mark to say कि ये future है, this is where the world is at? What kind of data, मतलब, is it data, is it just a vision? What do you think propels him into thinking कि ये है future?
I think Facebook has a very strong person in the market. They keep seeing what is working in social media. So anything new that comes up, right? They try to see why it's working, and they see if they can adapt their products to kind of have those features. So, for example, stories, right? Snapchat stories became very popular. Then Facebook had Facebook stories and Instagram stories, WhatsApp stories. Everywhere they kind of had that feature, and then they put in reels there as well. So I think Facebook just keeps a very strong understanding of what is going in the market, and then Facebook, I think, attacks it from all angles. Facebook then takes its own product, tries to kind of have the key feature there. The second thing Facebook does is it tries to, I think, almost create like the same product. So recently you see Threads, which is a direct competitor to Twitter.
Mm.
When Snapchat was a thing, I remember like back in 2014, I think Facebook launched a product called Slingshot, which was
Mhm.
like direct
Mm.
competitor to Snapchat in a way. And then Facebook goes and acquires a product. So like from all angles, it will attack that problem, and what is working, it will just have that. So I think that DNA that Facebook has is really really strong.
So Shivam, congratulations on getting acquired. You guys got acquired by Adobe, I believe. It was one of the most epic moments of acquisition for this year, I believe, because it was a recession year. It was winter funding winter that was we are undergoing, and getting acquired is a crazy, crazy move in such a funding winter year. So how did the Adobe acquisition of your company Rephrase come about?
Yeah, so one thing I learned about acquisitions is that every story for every startup is very unique. Uh, Back in 23 now, I think very early on we got an offer from a company which was interested in acquiring. And we had those offers in the past also. But back in 2023, what was happening was the chat GPT thing had come up, right? And OpenAI was killing the market. Like it was creating a
Mhm.
market in a way, but also it was just doing AI innovation at a pace where it was extremely difficult to catch up. And GPT-4 was about to come. So one thing that we like basically discuss internally in some meetings is that okay, if we want to compete with what is coming, we need to game up a lot, right? And in terms of AI that we have been doing, we have done incredible innovations in model research and everything. But the way AI and neural networks work these days is that you take a large model and you take a large model, when I say it means like billions of parameters. You take a lot of data and you take a lot of compute, and then you train the model. I mean, of course, like I'm making it sound simpler than it is. It's
Mhm.
extremely hard to, even when you have all of those things, to train a model and get it to perform. Uh, but at least you need that, right? It's a necessary condition, not sufficient. So even with necessary requirements, you need a lot of money, and for that you need more and more funding, because just to train a GPT-4 kind of model, which is just text only, it takes millions of dollars, and then like including iterations and the hiring and everything. And if you do it for videos, that number would just be extremely high, right?
What kind of number are we talking about, maybe?
I mean, it'll be tens of millions of dollars. The problem is that when you train these large models, it's very difficult to even say for sure if you train, let's say, a smaller version. Generally, the way you would do, let's say, if you're trying to see in the market if something is working, or if you're trying to see if certain thing would work or not, what you generally do is you do an experiment on a very small scale. It would be either small data, smaller model, something like that. And then you would try to kind of extrapolate it, that okay, if this is working, then a larger version of this would work. But when you talk about these models, it's very hard to say, right? You need like a lot of experience in that,
Mm.
of just specific large scale training, because even if you have a very strong theoretical concept, you have to have done some of these trainings at least a few times to know for sure if something would work.
Yeah, so I think training these large data models was an expensive task, and probably that's what led you to moving towards acquisition.
So it was not just that, right? So what was coming up? So basically, to be able to compete with those models, you would need to do a very large scale training, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of funding to be able to do that large scale training. That's one factor. And then other things that we were seeing in the market is that with AI coming in, market was just changing in a lot of ways, right? So what we were focusing on was a very niche problem in video, which was human avatars. And essentially we were working on lip syncing, voice, emotions, and then things like these, like basically everything related to your human face and human avatar. uh, what we started to see is that okay, now you can create these videos from scratch. So we
Mm-hmm.
were going in that direction as well. So when you see a problem, you try to attack it from all fronts. So we basically try to tweak the business model. When we were entering in the US market, uh, we were launching our product Rephrase Studio, and that was going in a certain way that was like picking up speed as well. And then there was this other path of acquisitions. At least we were open to it, right? So when we were talking to these different companies for strategic partnerships, uh, Adobe was one of the obviously like best companies in creative
Mm-hmm.
market. Adobe has all the products that we have grown up using, like Photoshop and Premiere Pro. My
Mm-hmm.
first role at my college was a designer, and I used Adobe Photoshop there. And when we were talking to them about some strategic partnership, it just came up that this could be a possible path. And then we discussed internally. It just made sense to kind of pursue it, depending on how some depending given some of the other conditions were met. So yeah, I think we ended up then taking that route. But it's generally a mix of a lot of things. We were seeing where the market was going. We were seeing what we would need to win in that market, from product, from AI perspective. And then the other part of all this also is that, uh, like like you said, right, the economy was going down. So selling in the US market, especially at the time last year, was also getting harder. And then you need to have a lot of luck in timing, at least, right? You need to have, I think, a lot of luck in a lot of things at startup, but you need to get the timing right at the very least. And if the economy is going down in the market that you're trying to sell in, it just doesn't work that well. So
Mm-hmm.
even though there was a lot of hype around generative AI and people were extremely excited to try this out in use cases, when it came to large numbers, larger deals, we were obviously like getting some of those wins. But as the market is economy is kind of against you, working against you, it just gets more difficult. There are all the odds are against you when you're doing a startup in a lot of ways. It's just that like how many of them can you deal with at a time. So given a mix of all those things, we thought that we would rather work on AI, which is our core strength, as a part of a larger
Mm-hmm.
company. And we were most excited to take this technology in a lot of places, because the larger companies have distribution. And I think in this era, large companies have great advantage because of
Yep.
distribution, because AI itself is not a product yet. It's a feature, like on top of a lot of things. Obviously it will in the coming years, even in 2024, the speed that it's moving at, it would, I mean, just create a lot of new products also. But right now in generative AI, especially in the creative AI field where we were there, I think it was just very specifically more of a feature.
I think, Shum, you talked a lot about distribution, and that's one of the favorite topics that I also like to dwell upon, right? I think you bang on that large companies now, massive distribution, they already have a massive distribution. And that's what hampering a lot of B2C companies as well, right, from growing. That's what's made a lot of, it's made very difficult to build a B2C company in 2024. And now even coming back to SaaS and all, वहाँ पे भी distribution already एक बहुत बड़ा है with these large companies and all. So how do you think when you compare a small startup starting up in 2024, how do you think they can solve for distribution? How do you think a small startup in today's era can get their distribution right? How they can they think about it?
Yeah, I think distribution is also just like one of the many problems that you have to solve in a startup. I do feel that if you know your customer well, and if you go after a very specific market and you solve their problem, and you will win, right? So what happens obviously is that if there is a larger player in the same market attacking the same problem with an existing distribution, gets a little more difficult to compete. But if you find your kind of those key insights, if you develop those key insights and then try to get there and solve that particular problem, then you do win. I mean, we have seen B2C products getting, we have seen B2C products coming and going. Uh, you can see like a lot of Zoom, for example. I mean, had B2B also, B2C also, but it did come in the market, one in a massive way, at least during COVID. Now I think it's,
Hmm.
I mean, post COVID doing like all right. But then you can see, of course, like distribution when it plays such a key role. Microsoft came in, distributed Teams everywhere. We are using Microsoft Teams at Adobe also, right?
Mhm.
And that also kind of helped the market, help them win the market. So that way, obviously, distribution helps. But again, like you can see a lot of B2C products coming and going, and that's why new brands get built. If you look at the offline space, I think again you need to build a brand. In online space, even if we talk about Facebook, for example, they had MySpace and Friendster existed at the time, but they went from college to college, got the distribution right. And Facebook at the time focused on real identities, where a lot of those other spaces kind of allowed anonymous, pseudonymous. Facebook focused on real identity, which built trust. That was like their key insight in starting. So, there's some of these factors. If you find the right user and you solve their problem, and then you expand from there, then I think you win.
I think some of the large players have now monopolized distribution कि आपको distribute करना भी है तो Facebook और Instagram के platform के ऊपर ही distribute करोगे, right? Or you would use Google to distribute, or you would use YouTube to distribute and all that, right? But I think we're talking about distribution, we're talking about your acquisition by Adobe. But one thing that we were discussing earlier for Rephrase is that you guys went really one of your results, one of your outputs went really viral, and your Cadbury ads. We're talking about your Cadbury ads with Shah Rukh Khan that gained massive attention, right? Anybody, to summarize, anybody could get Shah Rukh Khan to talk about their store as a brand ambassador. So, how do you think this came about, and what is the key behind its success? And can you like talk about the campaign in your own words, maybe?
Yeah, there are a lot of versions to this story. Honestly,
Mm.
the very first time we heard this idea was when we were part of Techstars, which is a startup accelerator, back in 2019, when like one of the companies that we were a part, which were also part of the same cohort, they mentioned, okay, what if Shah Rukh Khan comes to your screen and says, "Hey Shivam, do you want to buy my product?" Let's say, uh, you know, Havel's fan, right? But it's a personalized ad. And that was that back in 2019. We forgot about it when then we started on our own journey of finding product market fit. And we basically created a platform where you could create an entire video, right? And as we created that, we were hearing some problems and in the technology that okay, this video gets monotonic, and as people started creating even longer videos, those problems became even more prominent. So what we realize is that okay, what if, let's say, we just take one video and cut out a small part and then just create that, right? Came from a technical
Mm.
constraint in that way. And I had this very early discussion with my co-founders that uh, trying to win in this market would be tough, but once, let's say, we get one customer, it would just hit a very massive scale, right? So we created some demos with
Mm.
this, and then we tried out this concept and created a few videos, went out in the market. We thought that if no other company does it, we would hire our own actor. We would get a video shot, and
Mhm.
then we would for Rakhi. we would just open it up to people, and then they could send their personalized video of this actor to their siblings or brothers and sisters. And then we just pitched this concept to Cadbury, and we pitched this concept to Ogilvy and Waymaker. And like a lot of people at Ogilvy are super smart, right? WPP, one of the largest agencies in the marketing world. So they found that, okay, this was an interesting idea. And they did a smaller campaign with us on Rakhi, where they kind of tried out this concept. And then when they
Mm.
liked the idea, they actually went big on Diwali. So on Diwali, they said that, okay, we would create it for every single store in India, because during COVID, everything was very difficult for a lot of these small shop owners and everyone. And the idea there was that, what if they can make Shah Rukh Khan everyone's brand ambassador? And that's where like it kind of
Mm.
started. And then you go back and connect all the dots. Oh, in 2019 this had come up from someone that, okay, what if Shah Rukh Khan only comes up to your phone and in notification and gives you a personalized message? And then
Mm.
as the luck would have
Mm.
it was Shah Rukh Khan in that Diwali video. And yeah, I think that campaign gained massive success. It won Cannes Titanium. It won a lot of awards in the media space. Like every year, every few months, we would hear that, okay, not just the Cadbury ad won another award, and it obviously helped us massively. I would say that a lot of campaigns happened after that, a few before that also. Uh, some of them
Mm.
gained more success than the others, but not just the Cadbury ad. I think the way it was executed, a lot of credit goes to Cadbury and WPP also, on how they kind of use the technology. This is where you have the advantage of having the right partner for the technology. And I think that
Mm.
yeah, became massively successful. After that, there was no turning back. We just uh, did a shoot with almost all Bollywood actors and all cricketers, all major celebs in India. I wish I could go to more of those shoots, but as a company, all of that happened, and that was really really cool.
I didn't know that the whole Cadbury wala jo idea it came from Rephrase. I think matlab, I would expect कि company would come to you and Cadbury would come to you or a marketing agency would come to you and say कि यार इस तरीके का ad बनाना है हमें. I don't know कि मतलब it's coming from a technology company कि इस तरीके का ad हम बना सकते हैं, right? I think that's the beauty of technology. Uh, it can make you realize कि what's possible, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it can make you chase the chase the dimensions of जो भी रियल में जो पॉसिबल है उसके आप डायमेंशन चेज कर सकते हो राइट बट आई वांट टू कम बैक टू ना थोड़ा सा जेन एआई सिंस वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट जनरेटिव एआई एंड मेकिंग थिंग्स पॉसिबल यूजिंग जेन एआई जेन एआई में एकदम से रश आया है राइट and a lot of new Gen AI companies in India are also coming up. And some of the largest companies in Gen AI that have come up in India, at least valuation wise, yeah, जो भी news wise, let's say, they're coming up and focusing on building models for Indian languages, right? Mukesh Ambani started something called Hanuman, right? There is Krutrim by Bhavesh Agarwal, there is Sarvam.ai. But training these AI models, it requires a large amount of data, right? But here's this challenge limited data available for vernacular languages, right? So how do you think the problem of lack of enough vernacular data be solved and ensure that the vernacular models that are coming up are resilient, unbiased?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, if you look at like all the data that is available on the internet, I think a large amount of it is in English, right? OpenAI has scraped like, I don't know, almost I actually don't have the exact numbers and stats, but OpenAI scraped a lot of data from the internet and trained their GPT models. And what that did is the model now knows about the world, right? It has a understanding of how the world is, how people talk, and sure, it's kind of biased towards a certain culture, towards a certain language, But even if you ask it specific questions around, let's say, let's talk about maybe Bhagavad Gita, right? And if you ask those questions in Hindi, it can still respond pretty well. I've tried it in the past when it came out. Then also I wanted to try it, and it's pretty interesting, right? And now a lot of these vernacular stuff on top, I think, can just come as like a specialized training in a way, right? So for an understanding of the entire world, a lot of these things are common across cultures, right? On, let's say, what a human is, how you speak, how people feel, how cultures evolve. A lot of those things are common. And even in English, it basically has a lot of countries covered, a lot of cultures covered. India has a lot of English speakers. We are doing this podcast like largely in English and Hindi. So, given a lot of those things, I think a lot of data is already available, even for the culture. What I feel the value add, it obviously, like, there is bias in these models. So I think the data, I would think, is manageable in a way that you don't need all, let's say, vernacular data to just train your models. You need a lot of data uh, in different languages to be able to train these models, right? So you can build a foundational model just from the data that is available, even in English, let's say, but a little bit of some other languages, and then you can do another kind of training on top, right, to tune the model to that particular language or that particular culture. So I think that way there is a lot of scope. What I feel is, even with GPT-4, the technology is there. The bigger wins are yet to come in application space. And for that, I feel that it's great that India is catching up on this space so quick. Otherwise, I would have been afraid, like, people would create a lot of technology on top of some other models, and a lot of that big gain would go
Hmm.
out. I am glad that the foundational models are now being built here, and a lot of companies would get advantage from that. For example, the Sarvam AI founders, they built AI for Bharat as the, part of, I think they
Hmm.
were part of IIT Madras, and they worked massively on these vernacular
Hmm.
languages. So they have been at it for a while, for a few years, and I think from with Sarvam AI, they should get a big success. I am rooting for that.
I think you mentioned that ChatGPT replies pretty well to Bhagavad Gita ke around if you ask questions in Hindi as well, right? How do you think it gets it right?
Well, how does GPT get anything right? Nobody really knows yet. Uh,
Hmm.
the understanding of how these models work is a big research area on its own, but definitely, like, it has scraped the internet, and internet is filled with a lot of Gita ka, let's say, different understandings of different people. uh, let's say if you read Gita, I read Gita, like, you would have different versions of it. And I think there is a book called My Gita, and that it's a kind of based around this concept that your understanding can be very different from mine. So when I say that GPT gets a lot of these things right, is like it has its own understanding now, right? It's based on a lot of other people's understanding, but it kind of works. I mean, I don't know if GPT understands the context and whatnot, but as an output, if I see, it just makes sense to me. And for that reason, I think it has just seen Gita data like any other data, and it can now kind of reproduce it in its own language.
We are talking about some of these large language models and and all that. Uh, but if you talk about small startups coming up in this space, uh, how do you think the funding landscape is looking like, and how do you think small startups can compete with, say, large companies and like OpenAI or with some of the giants out there?
Yeah, that's a very interesting open question. I don't know, like, if a very small startup just can now come out of that, the popular garage model, or just out of a single bedroom model. Because with SaaS, all you needed was like just your computer and internet connection, and you could get started, right? You could build a software in your own home. Now with AI models, if you want to build a foundation model, you would need resources. It's not going to be just like from your laptop, unless you create, let's say, a mobile version of GPT, uh, just a very smaller scale, stripped down version of a large scale model, which works locally on your system, and you kind of fine tune that for a specific use case. I think that's one way to go about it if you want to build some edge in AI. But other than that, I think largely if you want to build a foundation model, it's really difficult. But as I was saying, like I think larger value is to be captured in the application space and the infrastructure space, right? With AI, you know that Nvidia stock is shooting up. If you build the
Hmm.
infrastructure layer on top of that, because AI is coming up in a massive way. uh, at least a lot of companies that are coming up now, I mean, AWS would probably, or OpenAI would not use your infrastructure. It would still use Nvidia but not your infrastructure. But a lot of companies that are coming in into the space, and obviously there would be a lot of companies that would come up in the space. If you build an infrastructure layer which just is very solid, and it just works, then you there is a massive opportunity there. And then there is a huge opportunity in the application space, right? On top of these models,
Hmm.
when they give you that technical capability of understanding almost everything. Now understanding, of course, like has its own caveats of whether this model actually just understands, or is it just doing autofilling. uh, but assuming that it understands a lot of these things, you can build a lot of applications on top. I imagine that the way I think about this is India has a uh, like, as let's say I am exploring these personal avenues of life, let's say traveling, medical. I feel that there is a deficit of trust in a lot of ways. If I want to go to a dentist, I don't know
Hmm.
like what kind of dentist is, who is the best dentist in the area, and how can I trust this person to kind of take care of my health. And you can similarly think like in travel. Recently, I had an experience where we went to a different city, and we booked like that mini bus. And when we were on a call, we had this conversation that okay, this is not an AC bus, and you don't need AC in this area. So thought okay, we would go with the non AC bus. And when we went there, we realized that the quality of that bus was not just like AC versus non AC. There were a lot of other factors, right? And it was not a great experience to travel in that bus.
Hmm.
And that again creates that trust deficit, that okay, what if I had someone I could trust to find me the right vehicle, find me the, like, basically to ensure that I have the great right experience of travel. And that way I feel that if we could build like a co-pilot for all of these things, I think there is a massive value to be created there. I hear like people now. One interesting thing that has come up is that because of what GPT-4 is doing, right, and because of what OpenAI is doing, and Anthropic and a
Hmm.
lot of companies are coming up in the space, there is this fear that okay, maybe software gets replaced, but at least the offline fields, uh, like you would still need to go to a doctor, or at least like
Hmm.
you would still need a health checkup to maintain your body. You would still need to eat food to survive, and whatnot. A lot of new ideas that I hear are around okay, some offline component, and then empowered by AI in some way. So I think that is a massive opportunity, and I think like a co-pilot version of a travel companion, a health companion, all these things, I think they will come up in a big way.
So if you enjoyed this, it would mean a lot if you subscribe and share your thoughts, reviews, and the guests you want. And आपको हम हमारे community के लिए links मिल जाएंगे notes में. You should join for brilliant networking and participate in the upcoming events and connecting with our guests. दोबारा मिलते हैं next discussion में.